Oddly enough, I was planning on doing it anyway. You have to be sensitive how you approach some topics. A bunch of people in live stream and in comments wanted me to make a video on prayer and the nature of prayer, the metaphysics of prayer, and I was actually planning on doing that anyway. I wanted to know what you thought about that. And be sensitive, yeah, however accurate and logical, of course. Um, Also, too, whether anybody wanted me to make a video, some interesting observations on the banking collapse. There was a lot of bad stuff going on, and the only reason the stock market responded positively is because that the government said that they weren't going to raise interest rates. It's not that they were responding positively because of the hideous turmoil that was going on with the banking sector, but that's a matter for another video. We were talking a lot about I didn't bring up the topic about two souls, and it was discussed in several live streams, and I've seen it in comments before where people say, well, you make a video about it. I keep hearing about two souls, and that's actually across all platforms of ancient metaphysics, both Greek, Indian, and Egyptian, and Scythian, and on and on and on, actually. Same is true as conjugate nature of the entire universe, principle and attribute, the same sort of two different types of soul. It's amazing how things actually stratify from the most simplex, i.e. the absolute, where you actually have a conjugate pair between the principle and the attribute, i.e. the agathon, or the one, or the good, or God, and the extrinsic attribute, which the Greeks called the iuristos deias. In Old English, it's actually kind of accurate, and English is not very good for metaphysical language. The best is, it's debatable whether it's Greek or Sanskrit. We could debate that. It's also too really good in Pali. Russian, by the way, is really bad. But in English, like Shakespearean English, English of back in the day, they would talk about souls wandering the streets. Like, nary a soul was seen on such a bad weather's day. And this soul, of course, is a reference to the existential persona non grata, Bob, Sue, and Larry. So this idea of two souls, apparently, and I never think about it in that way, I guess since I've been, so deeply entrenched in this stuff for decades, that the ideation of two souls really confuses a whole lot of people, apparently so. And the distinction is one is immanent, and the other one, of course, is transcendent. The conventional soul or the terrestrial soul. And this also, too, is the reason for a lot of confusion, especially from the so-called Buddhists. They say, there is no soul. It's like, well, you have to posit something before you can negate it. If we're actually talking about the conventional or terrestrial soul, then that, of course, is denied. Rupa nata, Veda nata, Sankara nata, Vijnana nata, including consciousness. Consciousness is not the soul. I asked a lot of people in live stream, apparently ChatGPT is incredibly, incredibly unintelligent. I asked them to tell me what ChatGPT says. What does the term anatta or anatman mean? And apparently ChatGPT is extremely stupid. Once again, artificial intelligence is not only not intelligent, but it's not genuine intelligence, meaning, spontaneous, nor is it linked to consciousness at all. I just gave you like pat answers from Wikipedia or also to Britannica, and all those answers are, of course, are wrong. The refutation of the existential soul, of course, is undeniable. We can find countless examples of that in both the Upanishads and Advaita Vedanta. Non-dual monism, whose founder was Adi Sankara. We can find that in the Upadisahasri and the Vivacchudamuni. So the conventional soul is not in question. The question is differentiating out the two and understanding which is which. And one is, of course, the transcendent principle to be identified with, and the other one, of course, is the one to be negated. This is where we get the idea of the dead man walking. This is a person who's died to the terrestrial or conventional, i.e. psychophysical self, and lives entirely in, and live, of course, is an incorrect word, identifies with the transcendent self. I'm going to talk about focus, and of course, people talk about and I don't use the word meditation ever because, and I wrote an article about that recently. The free article is a download in the description. Talk about focus or meditation. I would never use the word meditation, even though I just use the word again. Focus. Focus always and forever, of course, implies an object. That which is subjective cannot be a focus. And this means, and this is the reason why, and I had a phone talk with a guy for like 2 hours a few days ago and was telling him, he didn't understand it, and I explained it, and he had perfect clarity of it. I said, this is the reason that contrary to superficially people see, and they're looking at religion, they're not looking at metaphysics. Genuine metaphysics is hyperlogical, hyper-rational. An idea of focusing upon something and being able to find something always implies object. But the transcendent self is not an object, nor can it be focused upon. The very word focus, both connotation and denotation, implies focus upon something objective. And the transcendent self cannot be object. You can't focus on that. It's completely impossible. This is the reason why the only methodology, it goes by many different names, but it is one and the same thing regardless of the language, whether it be Greek, Sanskrit, or Pali, the via negativa, neti neti, not this, not that. This is the reason why the term, the Buddhists are so confused about that term, manara or not man. And everything you'll actually read on Britannica or Wikipedia is absolutely bombastically a horrific lie. They'll say, well, Buddhism is different than Hindu stuff, and it taught that there was no soul, hence the term Anatman. It's like, well, there's no such doctrinal passage of any translation. ABC, XYZ is not the soul. This is not the soul, that's not the soul. In other words, it's not an object of focus. Anything that is objective, consubstantial, has a beginning in time, has an end in time, just as the psychophysical self. And of course, consciousness has a beginning in time as part of the psychophysicality of any living being, necessitatively and logically so. Therefore, it cannot be, by definition, tat, or that. Yeah? The transcendent self. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. The fruit of yoga is the subjugation of noetic perturbations, or you could say spiritual perturbations, but that kind of sounds wrong. Bhava nirodha bandham. The subjugation of becoming means nirvana. Suvi mutta chitasana bandham. The thoroughly liberated spirit or nous means nirvana. Nirvana is nivritti. Nivritti means the subjugation of perturbation, near to the absence of vritti, perturbation. This also, too, extends all the way down to the existential persona. We were talking about possessions last night, and we're talking about the two selves, the two that are within this. This is the old idea of a devil on one devil on one shoulder, hello, I'll edit that out, and an angel on the other shoulder. You know, the question is, due to wisdom or lack thereof, which one do we listen to? The devil, of course, is the self, the existential or temporal, conventional or terrestrial self, which is interested in desires and fears and so on and so forth. And, you know, no religious school that I know of, including no high school or college, which is so incredibly important, and the most important thing for the reason of all suffering on this earth, is that everybody thinks that they are their beliefs, which of course is one strata of false selfhood, which is nami soata, not my soul, or of course conventionally is meant anatta or anatman. Those are the same words, one is Sanskrit, one is Pali, not the soul. But we have desires for things when we grow up, yeah? Desires for things that we like. Oh, I'd like a fancy computer, oh, I'd like a big house, I'd like a beautiful wife, I'd like an awesome job. And when we get these things, and just think about this for a second, I've not seen any video or any audio of anybody talking about this. It might exist out there. We have the desires for these things and we work really, really hard to get them. But once we have them, people have a greater desire for the things that they now possess than they did before. What does that mean? It means now people are afraid of losing. Oh my God, I got this great job, now I'm afraid of losing it. You know, if I don't do A, B, C, X, Y, Z, I'm going to lose this job that pays really well. Or, oh, now I've got a beautiful home, but now I have to worry about it more now that I have it because it needs to be insured and taken care of and utility bills. So, and this is the actual metaphysical principle of possession. Yeah? We are possessed by the very things that we desired to possess. And everybody, whether they be intelligent or not, thinks that, well, you know, the desire for possession ends once you have it. It's like, hey, this is my camera. Oh, like, say, you know, some super expensive camera, not that this is one, the XT4, right? You know, I desire to have it, and oh my goodness, now I got it. This is incredible. Oh, wonderful. But now you got it, then you get insurance on it. So you can't take it outside, you can't get wet, you're worried about somebody stealing it, you're worried about dropping it, worried about losing. You have more ills and more pain and more desires after you own the thing that you thought would end by you having it. What's the actual definition of true possession? You end up being possessed by the very things that possess you. You know, you possess the possessions, but in reality, they now possess you, and now you are their puppet. We're a puppet to all these conventional material and obtuse things like someone's friendships. Like, oh, this person is beautiful, I'm dating this beautiful, not me, I'm not doing that. I'm dating this beautiful person and I'm worried about losing her. Or it's like, it's amazing the depravity that, and this is us being possessed. But what is being possessed and what's in worry thereof is the conventional or terrestrial self. Doesn't anybody talk about stuff like that? Why doesn't anybody think like that? We need to be proximal, or have true proximity to the signal, and this gets back to the light analogy. Becoming or perturbation. The perturbation of that which we are not. Conscious perturbation, desires, the beliefs that we have. Well, I am my beliefs, and you attacked my beliefs, and therefore you attacked me because I am my beliefs. Now I hate you, or I want to do something horrible to you. You know, you want to talk about the cycle of becoming. It's the false identity of this modular self, which is not that which we are, which is comprised of desires and beliefs. Just think of the levels of desire of a conventional human being. Not really bad, not really good, you know, somewhere right in the middle of the road. The things and the possessions. Everybody wants to own like some sort of whatever the hell it is. And once they own it, they are now possessed by their possessions. You want to talk about who out there is possessed? The answer is like 99.9% of everybody. This is genuine conventional possession. Makes people crazy. Work our asses off so we can make money to own things, and then when we own them, we're worried about keeping them or losing them, and they're getting stolen or lost in a fire or breaking. Then the other desire is our attachment to our beliefs. Yeah. One thing is grasping after another, and that is not who we are. Everybody thinks that they're beliefs, and they're not their beliefs. The other thing that people think that they are is Bob, Sue, Larry, that has a set of memories and conventional ideas and belief systems. This is the tertiary level of desire. Can't obtain it, you can't keep it, can't hold on to it. So we end up owned by our possessions. We think we're our beliefs. We think we're our consciousness. We have bottomless pit desires for things that we don't probably need. You know, food, clothing, and shelter, I get that. Do you need fancy clothes? Do you need a fancy house? No, people don't. Everybody, you know, I wished I had like a big bathtub to soak in. That's probably the only thing I could think of that I ever wanted, that I never have had. A big bathtub. I could read books in it, you know. Regular bathtub, I know I'm fat, but like a regular bathtub is too small. There's an unhealthy desire that I have, I guess. I always wanted a big bathtub, yeah. One of those big bathtubs you could soak in and like submerge in. See, but desire for that, or wanting to, you know, work myself to death any more than I already do so I could make money to buy something I don't actually need. Showers are good enough. Yeah, right. I get that too. There is no signal without modulation. That modulation is the disturbance of our very soul. But the signal is not the modulation. The modulation is an epiphenomena. Any frequency, any modulation of existential selfhood is not that which we truly are. The modulation of epiphenomena has a beginning in time and end in time. It has a spatial footprint whereby which it is able to be tuned, because no signal without a frequency can be tuned. No signal without modulation can be tuned. This is not the definition of frequency. It would have no frequency. It would have no wavelength. It wouldn't be tuned. It wouldn't manifest. This, of course, would be the meaning of the dove, the dead man walking. This someone, of course, has died to the conventional self and lives into the transcendent self. So there are two souls. One is the transcendent, empirical, beginning in time and end in time, is modulation, is epiphenomena, is perpetually called over and over again, tens of thousands of times, na miso ata, in ancient Pali Nikayas, which means not the soul. I shouldn't say my soul, because my implies possession of one thing by another. This is my soul. I own it. It's my, Then we've actually degraded the subject-object relationship again. The soul is not and never has been an object. The conventional terrestrial soul is like, oh, nary a beautiful soul was seen on the street that day due to foul weather. Old English is pretty good on that front. The two souls are easy to understand. You can find it's called the foul soul versus the beautiful soul in ancient Pali. Plato talks about it, Pythagoras talks about it, Plotinus, Numenius, Damasius, Iamblichus, Proclus, Porphyry, Advaita Vedanta, the Upanishads. Every aspect of any true logical metaphysics speaks of the two souls. One has beginning in time and end in time. And by the way, the internal struggle, which is what it was between Jesus and the devil in the Badlands, or he's tempted by, that is not like some external entity. That's a debate. That's the fight between the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other shoulder. It's the internal struggle between the two selves. When someone becomes polarized, yes, it's a polarization, because a fool has no internal struggle. A fool is homogeneous between the evil and the good within him. No fool has any internal struggle. Yeah, the only people that have enormous struggle are those that have separated out to whatever degree, to a greater or lesser degree. You have polarization of selfhood. You have a distinction where before there was no distinction, now there is a distinction between the transcendent or good self and the conventional or terrestrial self, i.e. the psychophysical self. And this is the reason why all true holy people, you could say wise people, are tortured. I mean, they are self-tortured. Not on purpose, but because there is spiritual polarization. And this is hyper-rational and hyper-logical so far as metaphysics is concerned. I kind of hope I was able to draw some simplex parallels and discuss out desires and the two selves and make it more easily understand. I keep scratching my head because I got sunburned in Florida. My head is always itching because I got sunburned on my head. Even though I wore a hat, I still got sunburned. I don't know how that happened. I guess it's because it was a thin hat. Wisdom, by the way, is just self-proximity. And when there is self-proximity, there is spiritual polarization. And this is why wise people they have a struggle. I mean, they are at odds with themselves. Yes? We hear this from Christian mystics. We hear it from Jakob Böhme. Hear it from every form of rational metaphysics throughout the beginning, since the beginning of time, excuse me. Gautama had the same thing where he had the battle with Mara. It's not that it was a separate entity, it's just spiritual polarization. It was Gautama or Sakya against the self. Same is true of Jesus in the desert. You could disagree with that all you want, whatever you believe, I don't care, it's none of my business. But it was the same thing. Spiritual polarization. Yeah. When one makes oneself a point source, i.e. self-proximity, then there is spiritual polarization. The fool is never at odds. The fool is always comfortable with himself, sleeps good, never second guesses his decisions, because there is nothing at odds with anything. He's homogeneous in his ignorance and conventional stupidity, which of course is the outpouring of conventional or transcendent ignorance, i.e. metaphysical ignorance, i.e. agnosis. Foolish and evil people are never at odds with themselves. They sleep well. They live well, actually, up to a point. Up to a point, because evil always ripens and ignorance always ripens. but wise people are at odds with themselves. And this is the reason why holy men and wise men, and women too, I'm not picking on women or vice versa, are at odds with themselves due to spiritual polarization between the transcendent self and the terrestrial self. Thanks so much for watching. It is really cold outside. I hope you have a wonderful week. Goodbye.